Everyone, welcome back to Rolling Solo. My name is Adam Smith, and I'm very excited today to be starting a playthrough here on the channel as part of my Kickstarter preview series covering Frosthaven from designer Isaac Childres. I was provided 3 scenarios inside the components, and this particular scenario stuck out to me the most and was the most unique. I really enjoyed what I saw in the scenario Ice Floes. You can see that in the title of the video as I've already given it away. We're going to be diving into that scenario and playing it through here. You'll be able to watch it and determine for yourself whether or not this is a game for you, and hopefully this video series will help you make an informed decision. Now, if you want to see more components beyond what's going to be shown in this gameplay video here, you're going to want to check out my original release of the component overview, which was released last week. I'll put a link to that in the top right hand corner. My patrons on Patreon did a fantastic job of voting between the 6 different starting class characters of a Frosthaven campaign, which 2 I'm going to control in this solo playthrough. We will also talk about those 2 characters very, very soon. So without further ado, let's begin our adventure. As night passes back into day, you are greeted by something you haven't thought about for a long time: the sunrise. On these far waters, it is a remarkable thing to watch, that distant golden coin rising up from the horizon to shine upon this harrowed place, a much-needed source of color and warmth that drives away the night's anxiety. Renewed by its light, you sail on northward. The voyage has continued on this way for a little while now, and as you move deeper into the Lost Sea, it becomes a more perilous place. All about you, huge bergs of ice now float past, uncaring whether they crush your meager vessel with their craggy sides. And the wind, too, moves past uncaring. It is what drives your ship forward, but it also steals warmth from your body, chilling you by the very minute. And yet you have made progress. Following the shard's pole, you have sailed far into the north, and now you've reached what seems to be the destination, but there is one small problem. There's nothing here. You float about unanchored, sails secured, and spend a fair deal of time looking for any signs of another shard, a spit of land, a wayward berg, another shoal perhaps, but there is nothing here except the frigid, steady chop. It is not until you retire to the cabin and hold the shards together that you know where you must go. A heave rises under you, a swell of energy, and for a moment you feel like you're floating, but then that swell dies and you come crashing back down, slamming onto the cabin floor. Something struck the hull. You sprint up to the ship's companionway and are met by tall sprays of water and the sound of timber bending and breaking. Several lurkers have just boarded your vessel, their huge bodies forcing it to rock back and forth like a toy. And what's more, someone is shouting from the inside the hold. The creatures have made it inside as well, and they're beginning to smash holes in the ship. There's no time to think. The lurkers know you have the shards, and they will sink you to get them. Based on all the noise coming from the ship and the lurkers crowding on top of the decks, our heroes have definitely awoken and are making their way to the top deck. So let's go ahead and take a look at the complete setup for the ship. As you can see, there are a number of different lurkers on the ship that we're going to have to deal with, and the overarching goal of this scenario is to stop the ship from sinking. So we're going to have to remove all of these individuals off the board, and that's the very first step, is to clear the decks. We got to get rid of everybody off board and stop the ship from sinking. So we're going to start things off by quickly talking about the loot deck. Everything else is being set up as per regular Gloomhaven, but the loot deck is something that is new. How to assemble the loot deck inside of Frosthaven is depicted right on the scenario itself. It'll tell you what items to pull out of the deck, and anything money token wise or money card wise is going to be random. So in this particular case, we have 2 hide up top, 5 wood, and 2 arrow vine as asked for on the scenario sheet for scenario 25. We also need a random item chest, so I've got that there as well. Those we know of, and we'll shuffle them together to make the loot deck. But we also need to grab all of the money token cards, of which there's many more of than the regular resources, shuffle those together, and this scenario has us pulling 10 of them out at random without looking and merging them in with the resources you're seeing face up right now. That will create the loot deck, shuffle it up, and you're ready to go. As I already mentioned, each loot deck for each scenario is going to be different. And as simple as that, we have the loot deck all shuffled up, ready to go. Now, resources that you find inside of the loot deck are used to build buildings and items between scenarios. Herbs are used to brew potions between scenarios, and the random item allows players to draw an item card from the random item deck, which can be immediately used in the scenario. Town building is going to be another major aspect of Frosthaven, and a new entry into this series. We're on the major game board just below the overall world map. You have this outpost of Frosthaven. You'll be placing stickers inside of this outpost of Frosthaven as you build it up, creating new buildings on the different plots of land, as well as upgrading existing structures. You'll also have the availability to use areas such as the craftsman, the alchemist, the workshop, and the barracks in order to do specific elements only available in Frosthaven. So the craftsman, for instance, takes your loot that is resource based, such as wood, iron, and hide, and be able to convert that into an item you can then use. And you can find the requirements of whatever resources you need right on the item cards themselves. The alchemist is very similar to the craftsman, except its focus obviously is on alchemy and the building up of potions. There'll be lots of different combinations you can put together. The workshop allows players to build specific adventuring improvements, such as a boat or a sled, by spending resources. And the barracks provides a defense value for the town because certain events may have the town come under siege. Other major buildings that can be built beyond the 4 I just mentioned that will give you more gameplay elements are things like the logging camp, the mining camp, the hunting lodge, etc. that are going to provide additional resources to use within the game. I'll cover the rest of the major new gameplay elements of Frosthaven at the very end of the playthrough. For now, we need to find out more information about the 2 individuals selected by my patrons on Patreon. We want to learn more about their backstories, the card setup in terms of their decks, and who exactly we have here. The very first mercenary we'll talk about is the Banner Spear, and this particular character has the following 2 X cards at the very top of the screen. You can see their full deck right here. Now, I've already gone ahead and selected those 2 X cards to be added into the deck of 10 standard level 1 cards. So whenever you're bringing cards into your deck, in order to stay at the card level or limit that you have for your character, in this case 10, I need to remove 2 cards from the deck. So I want to show you the ones that I am getting rid of in order to put those X cards into play. Now, most characters in Gloomhaven and likely in Frosthaven have 3 X cards at their disposal, which can be mixed and matched in from the get-go. I want to show you the 3rd one for the Banner Spear that I decided not to use, and none of these are really good or bad choices. It really just comes down to personal preference. But also remember, the initiative in the middle of the card is just as important as the ability on the top and bottom. So after going ahead and adding in these 2 X cards, I've removed 2 level 1 cards from this deck right here, which contains now 8 level 1 cards, total of 10 cards, so I'm right up to my hand size limit and I'm ready to go. Let's find out a little bit more about the human Banner Spear. Humans are a resilient race, ever met with tragedy and war. Humans have persevered throughout the ages to become the most prolific civilization, reaching across the continent in search of new conquests. They may have overestimated their ability to survive with Frosthaven, however. Conquering the North is much more difficult and deadly. There are forces here, both known and unknown, that are best left undisturbed, but such things have not stopped humans in the past. At the head of this thrust into the frozen unknown are the banner spears, tireless warriors forever in search of glory and honor at the behest of the capital city of White Oak. Frosthaven has no need of pride, though. Cut off from their order they hold dear and faced with the harsh realities of the North. Banner spears are forced to reevaluate what truly matters. Will they give up everything to protect the outpost, or will they flee from the face of chaos and destruction? The other mercenary highly voted by my patrons on Patreon was the Drifter. And as you can see, the Drifter has a card limit of 12. And so we can see we have 10 Drifter cards in this deck at the very end of it. And I'm adding in 2 X cards, No Remorse and Destructive Fury. Now I had to remove 2 level 1 cards in order to make room for these, as I talked about in the last mercenary setup. This is the card I am removing, and this is another level 1 card that I am removing. There was one additional X card that I could have chosen, and it is Fortitude, but this one will also not be a part of the final deck. So just like that, we've got our deck created for the Drifter ready to go. Let's find out a little bit more about him. The Inniks are a proud and stubborn race with imposing forms and unrivaled physical strength. Many of their tribes were destroyed when the humans expanded across the continent, leaving only scattered settlements hidden deep in the forests. Strength means little when you refuse to cooperate, and many Inniks have taken this lesson to heart and have joined with human society, offering their prowess. Still others, however, continue to fight against the human expansion. And then there are Drifters, those who have given up on all allegiances, human or Inniks, and traveled the continent looking out for their own survival. It is a hard life surviving day to day off the land, being prepared for any possible encounter, but there is a certain satisfaction that comes with it, and those that truly wish to test their skills travel north into the harshest environment possible. The Banner Spear is going to start with the item Eagle Eye Goggles. This is an item which you'd be familiar with if you played the original Gloomhaven. It says, during your attack, gain advantage on the entire attack action. We simply exhaust it, as it shows in the bottom right hand corner. In order to use it, it'll allow us to pull 2 modifier cards and take the better of the 2. The Drifter is going to have 2 items to use, but you'll notice the value of those 2 items is the same value as the Eagle Eye Goggles at 30. Now, the Iron Helmet here is really great at mitigating any pulls from the modifier deck for the monsters that land a ×2 on the attack modifier. So if we get that as an attack against us, I can actually change that value to be a 0 instead, which is fantastic. So this is a passive ability and does not get discarded or does not have to be exhausted to use, so a very useful one in combat. This one right here, the Boots of Striding, allows me during my movement to add simply an additional 2 move to that movement, allowing me to move even further, simply just exhausting it. Now we'll talk quickly about the different enemies, because we will be in combat with them and know more about their abilities as we go along, but overarching in terms of the understanding of how they're set up, basically you have regular units on the left in gray and your elite units are in the gold on the right hand side. So when you see a yellow base underneath a standee, that is an elite version of that particular enemy. We have 4 total regular units across the 2 different types, and we have 1 elite. The 1 elite is actually a Lurker wave thrower. So we have an elite that will use this right hand side at 8 health, 2 movement, 2 attack, and no ranged ability, but it will try to immobilize us whenever it can. The regular versions of this particular unit type have no additional statuses they're going to throw away, and they're also not going to move as quick or attack as hard. Those wave throwers that we just talked about are at the back of the ship there. You can see them all in a clump with the elite in the middle. The Lurker Claw Crusher can target up to 2 different enemies at the same time, which is quite deadly. They have a shield which will prevent damage coming through up to 1, and they have a total health on the regular side of 10, a movement of 3, and an attack of 2. There are no elite versions of this unit on the board as of yet, but if there was, they would have the injure ability or condition on top of it, plus, if you can see below there, there is a shield 2 value, which would certainly make them a lot harder to take down. And finally, just before we get to the very first round of the playthrough, I want to talk about a couple extra items that I've thrown in here in terms of some 3D proxy items that are not actually a part of the original scenario. So first off, a lot of this stuff that you're seeing here that is 3D terrain all comes from Terrain Crate. They're really, really handy. I use them in multiple different games. I even used them in the original Gloomhaven playthrough. The one thing to note though is that this crate right here and the crate back there are legitimate tokens normally for this scenario. So think of those two crates, the one in the far back right and this one right here, as being legitimate actual tokens, and they are going to be obstacles in the way. They're not going to block range or anything like that, but I'm going to have to work around them. All the other 3D terrain, like these ones on the edges, are simply there just for aesthetics. And I've also gone ahead and placed an actual trapdoor leading to the bottom of the ship, which we don't have access to move into that space until later in the scenario. For now, we have to get up onto the top of the ship deck here and clear this ship deck off, and then we'll be able to head into the hatch. I've gone ahead and selected the two cards that I want to use for each of my characters, an 83 initiative here and a 66 initiative here. So as you can see, I'm purposely trying to go very late in the round with the high initiative numbers. The lower your initiative, the earlier in the round you're going to go. Let's find out what these claw crushers are going to do. 31, that worked out pretty good for me, going early. And this one, 48, that's perfect. The claw crushers are the lowest number. They will activate first, and they are going to try to move. And we're going to be starting with the regular versions of them. There are no elites, so we just go in numerical order based on the standees and activate them. So as you can see, we have two of these at the regular level. Their base movement is 3, and there was a +1 move on the ability card, so it gives a total of 4 movement, which is quite a bit. There's also a numerical value on the standee that tells you which one goes first when you have multiple of the same type of unit as well as the same level. So we have 2 of these claw crushers. They're both normal. So we go to the standee and it says 1 right here and 2 over here. So this one will activate first. We technically have an equal distance to both heroes for a focus here. No matter how you draw it out or either path this Lurker takes, both of these particular units are exactly 6 spaces away from that number 1 Lurker. So because of this, we need to determine which one has the highest initiative in terms of those cards flipped at the beginning, and that would actually be the Drifter. So Lurker number 1 is going to stick to the Drifter over here, and it's going to move 1, 2, 3, and 4, landing right on the stairs. And from here, it's going to try to do an attack, but it cannot do the attack, so it's not going to. It doesn't have range. It's trying to get within melee range in order to actually make an attack eventually, but it can't currently. Now we move to the next activation. This Lurker right here is going to do something similar. 1, 2, 3, 4, as it's trying to get to the next opening, even though in this case now the focus changes because the only path drawing for that particular unit would be through this staircase and down. You can see no matter what coming through here with equal distance to both, its attention is still technically on the Drifter. Doesn't matter though, because it can't reach it, can't attack it. Also at the bottom of Frantic Swipes is an Elemental Infusion for this one right here, moving all the way to the Strong column. There's also one correction I want to make based on the movement of the Lurkers. Now these two Lurkers had 4 movement total, 3 regular on their stat sheet as well as +1, but in order to get to the spaces they're currently in, and this is something I should have mentioned from the beginning, is that these particular staircases are classified as difficult terrain, meaning they cost an additional movement point to get into them. So the Lurkers wouldn't have had the total amount of 5 each to get into those spaces, so they're actually going to be stuck back 1 space. Now it's time for the wave throwers to activate. They're going to move and attack, but in this case, they're just going to move. The elite version is going to move forward 2 spaces, activating first, being that it's elite, and now we check the numbers on the standard versions. We have a 1 and a 3, so the 1 will activate first. We'll go 1 and then 2, and then finally the one in the back will go 2. 1 and 2. Again, remember the focus of all of these characters being that they're equal distance away from both of the heroes are all currently going towards the Drifter. Speaking of the Drifter, it's now time to activate him. He's going to go ahead and use the top part of this card here, and this is going to sit in the active area here and will be discarded once we run through all the different XP slots while using this to boost ranged attacks. It's called Precision Aim. The next 6 times you perform a ranged attack, add +2 to that attack, and again, this is not optional. You have to do this every single time you make ranged attacks. Now, I've got the incorrect token here from some spare parts within the prototype to use as a tracker here. There's a different one. This is actually technically used for summoning, but it does the job. And as we move off of these spaces while using it, it's going to give us XP, which will be really, really handy for us. The second card I'm going to play for the Drifter is another active ability. This one says, the next 6 times you perform a move, add 2 move to it. This is going to give him a lot of ability to dance around. The reason I'm doing this is because the actual combination of the Drifter along with the Banner Spear is quite a powerful one in terms of the Banner Spear's ability to lay down some pretty good attacks if their partner is in the right position for those attacks. So by giving a lot of movement to the Drifter, I'll have more chances to get the Drifter into the right spots at the right time to give the Banner Spear the chance of laying down some pretty nasty hits. Fingers crossed. Now it's time for the Banner Spear to begin her turn, and she is going to start off with some movement. She's going to spend the 2 from the very bottom of this card right here, which can be used for movement as well as the ability that's here. You can see on the far left-hand side, you can use it for 2 move or the top section for 2 attack. I'm using the bottom section for 2 move. I'll discard this card and I'm going to move her over to this corner right here. And from there, I'm now going to go ahead and use Javelin. This card right here allows me to make a ranged attack of 3, and I'm also going to be infusing the wind element. So the real question here is, do I want to go ahead at this point and use my Eagle Eye goggles in order to ensure that this attack lands successfully? It is a 3, which is a pretty strong attack, and actually most of the cards that the Banner Spear has, if they're higher than 3, typically have to be removed or lost from play, meaning that I lose a card from my hand, which is essentially my life force. So by actually using the goggles, it might help me to land a better hit. So let's go ahead and smartly choose to exhaust this. It says during your attack, gain advantage on the entire attack. You have to do this, of course, before you start drawing your modifier. So I am exhausting this. Let's draw 2 cards and see how this pans out for us. The first one's a -1, so it seems to be a good decision so far. Let's hope for higher numbers on the second one. Okay, it would have been great if it had been super high, but you know what? At least it saved it so that we guaranteed to land 3. Now, what's really vicious about these particular individuals is that they have a shield 1, so they are in fact going to block 1 of the damage coming through at them. So in that particular case, they'll only take 2. Now, I didn't specify which of the targets I was going after there, which I definitely should have, but I will let you know honestly, it was the closest one to me here, number 2. So simple as that, we put 2 damage on the number 2 position for the Lurker Claw Crusher. The last part of the Javelin card that I just used for the Banner Spear says that the wind element is going to be infused to the strong column, and ironically that was literally the end of the entire round. So at the very end of the round, everything moves down 1 space, so we have the 2 strong elements there moving to the waning column. We can choose at this point to optionally short rest if we want to try to get some cards back up into our hand again, but at this point I don't want to do that. So now we go ahead, check to see if there's any of the shuffle symbols, which is a rotating arrow on the corner of any of the cards in play, and there isn't currently, so we skip past that and begin a brand new round. I've gone ahead and selected my cards for both of my mercenaries. We got a 20 initiative on this side and a 19 over here. Let's go ahead and draw for the enemies. You can tell from my initiatives that I definitely want to go early on in the round. Let's see how this pans out with the enemies. Oh, a 13. Well, that certainly didn't work, and we'll be probably likely starting off with them, the Claw Crushers. Second up here, we got, 51 for the Wave Thrower. Okay, so we're definitely starting it off with the Claw Crushers. This card actually works out quite nice for me, although it's a little bit of a downside at the same time. So first off, there's no movement here, which is great because it keeps them away from me. There isn't going to be an attack because they are too far away from me to actually make an attack. So thankfully I won't be immobilized. Moving down to the second portion, it says shield 2 on self. This is actually really bad because basically each of them are going to buff their shields up. So now instead of having just a 1 from the basic stat that they already have, they now have a total of 3, which is going to make any attacks I make during this round that much harder to get through the defenses. Plus, they will be pushing up the green element. So the 2 Claw Crushers right here are all beefed up with 3 shields, and they're also going to infuse this element to the strong column. So the Drifter initiates first, and Deadly Shot is what I'm doing with the Drifter. So a long range shot here. I have a range of 5, which is really long, much longer than I need. And all I have to have is line of sight to the target, which I can draw from the corner of one of my hexes to the corner of one of the hex that target sits in. I'm going to aim at this one right here. It's an attack 1. Remember, though, I did put a card into play last round called Precision Aim. It's sitting in my active area, and every time I make a ranged attack, I get a +2 on it, so it'll actually be an attack 3 from distance. The card I'm referring to is this one right here, so we'll definitely be going ahead and moving this over, and because I've gone past that particular circle, I'm gaining, based on that icon, an experience points, which I'll give myself 1 experience point right after we make this attack. Let's go ahead and find out what happens. There we go, a +1 right at the gate. That's pretty awesome for the Drifter. So +1 on the 3 that we already had is a 4. They are currently 3 shields apiece, but I'm only targeting the 1, and it actually is the numeral 1 on the left-hand side, and 1 damage will actually be getting through. Plus, that individual is going to be poisoned. That would have been a far, far better attack if I had have actually not had to deal with as much shields as what happened in that last pull for this card right here. It really did help them survive because this would have got hit pretty hard at 4. Even the 1 shield it has at a base, it still would have been 3 damage. That would have been nice. It didn't pan out, but now we have poison as a condition on this thing. So whenever we make an attack against this particular unit right here, number 1, we're going to be able to up our attack by +1. The card we use is in the discard pile, and we're going to go ahead and up our XP from 0 to 1. Now I really want to get my Drifter into a position that the Banner Spear can use to her advantage when making an attack in the future. So what I've planned to do here is go ahead and use this card right here, which if I used it for the top or bottom is quite an amazing attack, which I'll probably want to hold on to for later, but I would lose the card in either case. I'm instead going to use it for its move on the bottom portion. So we'll discard this to gain a move, and because I do have sustained momentum on my character as an active ability, I'm going to have to go ahead and use that right away, which gives me an additional 2 movement. So now I have a total of 4, which is actually what I wanted to get anyway. So I can go 1, 2, and then this will actually allow me to go 3, 4 into this position here. Now, it's not exactly where I wanted to be for the upcoming turn in the future, or even next, because technically the Banner Spear goes next, but it's very close. I was hoping to get to here. Now, there is one way I could make that happen, though. I could use, at this point, the Boots of Sterling, and I actually kind of want to do it in order to get into that position. So I'm going to go ahead and exhaust it for an additional 2 movement right now. But I'm only going to end up using it for 1. Remember, once we do our resting, we can bring that thing back if it's a long rest. So I've moved now into a position I definitely want to be in. And now that is the end for the Drifter. And I'm going to go ahead and gain an experience point for this sustained momentum right here. So the Drifter is doing quite well out of the gates already up to 2 XP. Alright, this should be pretty fun. We'll see how it goes, though, with these crazy shields that these Claw Crushers have on them right now. So my plan of hitting for heavy, heavy damage this round definitely went down the drain by those shields being involved. So first off, we're going to go ahead here and use Regroup at the bottom here. We're not using it for ability on the card. We're going to use it for the movement of 2. So I'll go ahead and discard that for the Banner Spear. We'll move this Banner Spear right on top of the staircase as it costs 2 movement to get there. She is now in perfect position in order to execute combined effort, which was the plan all along. So you can see this orientation here on the top section of the card for combined effort has a red, which is going to be the enemy we're going after, which is enemy number 2. The green is where the ally needs to sit, and the gray is where the current player needs to sit, the banner spear. So we have that orientation. And again, you can rotate this. It doesn't have to be like this. It doesn't have to be legitimately a hex up top and 2 below. You can rotate this any way you want that makes it logical. So in this case, it's working quite well for me, orientated like this. So this is exactly how I want to use it. It's an attack 4, which is already huge. It's going to throw a wound on this individual for a condition and gives an XP for her, which is quite nice. Now, it certainly would have been a lot more epic of an attack if there wasn't 3 shields on these guys, so that could put a damper on this whole thing. Never mind, it is still an epic hit. Oh, it would have been even better if there wasn't shields, but this is still fantastic. That is a total damage, or at least attack value, first off, of 8. It's 4 plus, or I should say times 2, up to, it makes it 8, but now we take away 3 shields, which is brutal because it would have been nice to actually get that much damage, but 5 damage going on to that number 2 Claw Crusher. And look how absolutely brutal that shield is for us right now, because 8 damage on number 2 would have been the 10 we need to kill it off in that hit. It would have been an epic kill, but instead it's just 5, so it's a total of 7. We're still 3 away from taking it out. The good news is we did get a wound on this thing, so every time it starts its turn, it's going to take a hit point of damage, as well as a point of XP, so the banner spear is on the board. Last but not least, we have the wave throwers in the back. This is going to be a little bit painful for us, though. We have what's called distant wave, so we'll go ahead first and activate the elite. So for the wave throwers, the elite is going to go right now, and it has a move -1. Its base stat is 2, but it's actually not going to move because right underneath of it, there's an attack. It's happening by range, and the range is 5. It currently has enough range right now to have a focus on our drifter without having to move whatsoever. It can draw a line of sight from one of its corners to the drifter's corner in its hex, so it can make a long range attack, which is really unfortunate. So it's going to stay exactly where it is. The attack is +1 on top of its regular attack, which is not going to be good for us. So that is going to be a total of 2 going into it, and we have to flip a modifier to see if this gets any worse. Cross your fingers, because I'm not sure how this is going to go. Hopefully it's not too bad for me. Ooh, it's a +0, which is good for me that it didn't get any worse, but it will be 2 damage coming my way. I have to decide, do I want to get rid of a card that I have in my hand and actually lose that card to remove the damage, or to stop the damage from getting through to my HP, or just take the 2 damage? And I think I'm going to go ahead and just take that 2 damage. The drifter is simply going to drop from 10 down to 8. Just when you thought it couldn't get any worse for our drifter, now the normal wave throwers are going to go. And this one right here, number 1, will go next, and it is definitely within range of multiple enemies or 2 of our mercenaries. It's going to go for whichever one is shortest path away. So in this case, it is the drifter again getting attacked here, which is really unfortunate. So we're pulling another modifier card to see what happens. Life sure isn't easy for the drifter at the moment. Let's see. Oh, there we go. That's what we wanted to see. That is a null, and that is a full-on miss. Now, this is a super lucky break for our heroes or mercenaries, because this lurker in the back, number 3, is actually 6 spaces away from being able to target the drifter. And because it only has a movement stat of 1, and the card that was flipped called Distant Wave says move -1, it only has 0 move right now, which means it can't take advantage of moving any closer to make that long-range attack, so we dodged a bullet there. That's another round in the books, so our elements are going to move down a column each. I don't want to optionally short rest with either of my characters, but one thing that'll also be happening at the end of the round, as you can see here based on this icon, as well as this icon, and this icon up here, is we have to shuffle all of those decks at the end of a round. Here's what I've chosen to do going into the next round for both my characters. I want to go very, very early on to try and see if we can put down some of these lurkers right in front of us. So I've got a 14 initiative on the drifter and a 15 initiative here on the banner spear. Let's see what's happening for the Claw Crushers. They're going 36. That's pretty good for what we've got for initiative. And this one's going 98. So that's pretty far along. That'll be at the very tail end of the round. So with the Drifter, I will be going ahead and using this card right here for the bottom portion, but not for the heal 2 that you're seeing, although I could definitely make use of that. I want to get into a position to make some range shots. So I'm going to use this for a movement of 2. Remember, I do have sustained momentum on as an active ability, so I have to use that. So I burn that movement. I'm moving it ahead 1 slot. There's no XP to be gained this time around, so technically I have a movement of 4. I could put myself in a different position now, which I think I actually will. So I'm going to go ahead and actually go 1, 2, and 3 and land right here, because what I want to try and do is make 2 attacks at these 2 right here. And in order to pull that off, I'm going to be using Draining Arrows. It's an attack 1 card, range 2, which is why I sat myself right here so I can hit this one as well as hit this one. And it is a muddle as well involved, which is fantastic. That'll give them some disadvantage when they come back at us if that happens to pan out. So first off, again with ranged attacks for the Drifter, I can increase them, and I have to increase them by 2 thanks to my active card, Precious Aim. So first off, I'm going to go ahead and attack this one right here. Remember, this one is poisoned from the last round, so that's going to give me a +1 on the attack, meaning that my attack now has gone from a 1 to a 2. Plus, I'm going to go ahead and activate my ability here, which is going to generate me no XP, but it does give me an additional +2 attack. So now I'm at a total of 4, and now I'm going to the modifier deck to see if this can get even nicer for me. Let's see. Oh, no, it did not pan out that way for me this time around, so it's a -1, which is a 3. And remember, this time around, they don't have that 2 shield boost on their regular shield of 1. So they only have 1 shield. I'm hitting them at 3, so only 2 gets through on that unit. Would have been nice to see a little bit more damage on this one, but hey, 2 damage is still 2 damage. We're still ticking our way up towards 10, so this one now has a total of 3 damage. It's still poisoned, but now it's also muddled. And muddled is a new condition that we haven't seen in this playthrough yet, but is from the original Gloomhaven. And it says, if a figure is muddled, it gains disadvantage on all of its attacks, meaning you're going to draw 2 cards and take the worst of the 2 when it's making an attack against me. Pretty awesome. At the end of its next turn, the muddle token is removed. My second attack using Draining Arrows is going up against this regular wave thrower. I get my attack 1 on the card. I'm going to be boosting it with Precision Aim. That is going to give me an additional XP. So the Drifter will move from 2 to 3. And it's time to see if I land a big time hit. Now remember, these wave throwers in the back, the 3 of them don't have any shields, so this could be good. We'll see. Famous last words. -1. It didn't pan out for me that time. So yes, I have a +2 attack here, and yes, it is a 1. That's a total of 3. -1 is going to be 2 damage going on that one. The wave thrower that I hit was unit number 1, so we'll place 2 damage on it, and we're also going to place a muddle token, which is fantastic. That will help with any attacks coming my way. The Banner Spear is going to activate next and use Deflecting Maneuver. This card here is an attack 2. I'll be attacking this unit right beside me, and underneath of it, it says all attacks against you this round gain disadvantage. So that's going to be a nice round bonus, and it's going to sit there in my active area for the rest of this round in case these things try to attack me back. That will definitely help me out. So what I'm going to do is I'm also going to play this next card, the second card in my hand, for the bottom, and it says add +1 attack to your next attack action this turn. So technically, I guess I should have played that one first and then the other one afterwards, but in essence, it doesn't matter in this case. So it is going to be an attack of 2 +1, which is 3. Not a bad start. Now this unit currently has 7 hit points against it and is wounded. The wounded does nothing until it activates, then it takes a wound. So right now, if I can keep this 3 attack at 3, I will kill it off. But a negative will definitely ruin me. Okay, good. We're safe. A +1. That's a guaranteed kill now. Awesome stuff. So the first Claw Crusher, one of these gigantic annoyances with the shields, has been taken out, making life a little bit easier on the ship. The next activation here is going to be for the Claw Crusher, and again, this thing is going to try to do some harm. Good thing we kept ourselves far enough away because it is a target 2 type creature, so if we had a bundled up close together, it would have been a really bad strategic choice because this thing would have tried to move in between us to try to attack both of us at the same time. It is only melee, and this particular Crush Armor states it has a move, but it's going to be an addition of 0, so it has its regular move as it needs it. Then it's going to do an attack at -1. The regular unit on the standard side has an attack of 2, so it'll only be coming at us with a 1 to start before the modification. Then down below here it says add +X attack, where X is double the shield value of the target. So as you can see, the Lurker is actually one step away from both of my mercenaries. Now currently it has a move +0, but it has a basic move of 3, so it has more than enough movement to get to one of these two targets. They're both equal distance away. They both could potentially be an option, but it's going to go towards the one that initiated earlier in the round, which is going to be the Drifter. So it will move towards the Drifter to make an attack while the Drifter has its back to it. And the good news is the Drifter doesn't have any shields. Actually, neither of my characters have shields, so that additional piece we read at the bottom of the card about being crushed armor and kind of crushing through the armor and getting additional attack for going up against a mercenary with armor, well, I don't have any, so no bonus there. So the attack is -1 to a base stat of 2, so basically 1 going into the modifier deck. Fingers crossed this doesn't hurt me too bad. +1, that's no good. So that's going to be a total of 2 hits coming to the Drifter. Do I want to get rid of a card, or do I want to take the hits? One of these days, this Iron Helmet is going to come in handy when we get a ×2, but it still hasn't as of yet. I'm at 8 HP. I got to decide what I want to do, and honestly, I don't want to lose any more cards, especially when I have 2 of my 12 up in the active area. So I'm going to go ahead and just take the HP hits and hope that we can get some healing done. But wait, I made one mistake which I just caught. This individual is muddled, and when it makes its attack on its turn, it's actually going to gain disadvantage, which means we have to pull another modifier card from the deck. Maybe this will help us out, maybe it won't. Oh, it definitely didn't help us out. So either way, it ends up in the exact same result we already had. But you don't want to miss that kind of stuff. Now it's technically the end of the Claw Crusher's turn, so this muddle token can be removed. Now we're moving on to the very last creature to initiate, the Wave Thrower. It's a 98. I'm going to read you exactly what's going on here, and then I'll show you how this resolves. It's called Aid from Below. It's definitely not a good thing for us. It says summon 1 lightning eel to an adjacent unoccupied space with a water tile. Place a 1 hex water tile in an adjacent empty space if necessary to summon. Normal wave throwers summon normal eels, and elites summon elites. So in one moment, the ship appears to be manageable. It seems like we've got a potential chance to wipe this deck clean. That was until a whole bunch of eels broke through the bottom of the ship and appeared. As you can see, this card can come through the monster ability deck and throw some serious wrenches into this scenario as the eels begin to not only appear on deck, they're literally breaking holes through the bottom of the ship and appearing. Plus, these eels will sit and stay in water-based spaces only, so we can pick them off from a distance or wait for them, but as we kill them off, they will shuffle and move throughout the water tiles on the ship. Being that it's the end of the Wave Thrower's turn, this muddle token is also removed. The end of another round sees all elements move down 1 column, and there is 1 deck to be shuffled right here. So that deck has now been shuffled, and I actually, just before this round ends, have another strategy in mind for the upcoming video in part number 2. I want to talk you guys through what I'm thinking of doing, and let me know in the comments below whether you think this could be the moment to do such an epic move. Now, I don't particularly like short resting when I don't have to, but sometimes there's cards that are sitting in the discard pile that you've already used that are sitting perfect in terms terms of orientation for use in a given upcoming turn. And this is one of those instances. Granted, I still have to make sure that I can go early enough in the round to ensure the positions of all the enemies remain, but if they do, is it worth it to short rest with the Drifter in order to get Destructive Fury back into my hand? If I do, I can sit based on this pattern up here, in this position right here, only 2 movement away, a very easy move to make attacks against all 4 of these, and on top of it, I have 3 more remaining boosts through precision aim of +2 attack, so I would be hitting these things with 4 attack. The reason that matters a lot is because this is an elite and I'm going to need a total of 8 to take it out. Even the standard ones are 8, so I need lots and lots of damage on those to get them off the board. Plus they're spawning eels. These eels are actually quite weak and I haven't put those cards out yet. They're just 2 damage, if I remember correctly, to take them down. So an attack 4 would almost guarantee we wipe those out, and also put a big time hit on the elite wave thrower and the regular wave thrower. So with all that said, let me know in the comments below, do you think now is the time to short rest with the Drifter in order to try to set up an attack that could potentially do some big time damage? If you think it's worth it, let me know in the comments below. Would love to hear your feedback. If you have any questions at all about the playthrough thus far, let me know. If I happen to make a mistake or miss explaining something, also let me know, and I'll do my best in part number 2. However, I may have already filmed part number 2 before I get all of your feedback. If that is the case, the pinned comment is where you'll want to go for any FYIs on any corrections for the rules. Thank you guys so much for watching. Really hope to see you in part number 2. And as always, keep on rolling solo.